In December 1989, a strange event unfolded in Hong Kong's North District. This bustling area was known for its lively markets and delicious street food, attracting locals and tourists alike. Amidst the clamor was an old restaurant called Kong Cha. The restaurant had a charm of its own, with its wooden beams and faded red lanterns hanging outside, giving it a nostalgic feel. Inside, the scent of simmering broth and fresh herbs wafted through the air, making it a popular spot for those craving comforting dishes. Kong Cha specialized in various types of cuisine, but its focus was primarily on cha rice and pho. The restaurant had a small but dedicated staff. Among them was a young man named Sheng. He was in his early 20s, energetic, and eager to please the customers. Sheng had been working at Kong Cha for a few months and enjoyed the friendly atmosphere. His colleagues were like family, often sharing laughter during their busy shifts. Despite the workload, Sheng always wore a smile, especially when serving the regulars who appreciated the warmth of the restaurant. One chilly afternoon, as the sun began to set, casting an orange glow over the city, Sheng was at the counter when the phone rang. He answered it promptly, his voice filled with enthusiasm. "Kong Cha, how can I help you?" On the other end of the line, a customer placed an order for food for 4 people. They wanted pho and grilled pork rice with eggs. "It's at number C, Building B in Garden Plaza, right?" Sheng confirmed, jotting down the details on a notepad. "I'll deliver it right away." Excited about the new order, Sheng quickly donned his jacket and grabbed a bag to hold the food. He didn't want to keep the customers waiting, so he hurried out of the restaurant, the bell above the door jingling as he stepped into the crisp evening air. As he navigated the streets, the busy sounds of the city surrounded him. People were bustling about, some haggling over prices at market stalls, while others enjoyed steaming bowls of noodles at nearby food stands. Sheng enjoyed this vibrant atmosphere, but his focus was on delivering the food. After a short walk, he reached the address. The building loomed ahead, old and seemingly abandoned, with cracked walls and overgrown weeds creeping up the sides. It looked like it hadn't been occupied for years. The wind howled softly, causing a shiver to run down Sheng's spine as he approached the entrance. He raised his hand and rang the doorbell. The sound echoed into the stillness, but no one answered. A cold gust of wind blew through, sending chills down his back. Sheng looked at the posters scattered on the ground, some peeling away from the door frame, suggesting that the house had long been forgotten. He rang the doorbell again, waiting anxiously for someone to come out. "Maybe I wrote the address wrong," he muttered to himself, glancing back down at the notepad. He felt a flicker of doubt. What if he was being scammed? Just as he was about to turn away, the faint sound of movement caught his attention. It came from inside the house. A moment later, the door creaked open a crack, and Sheng could see a sliver of darkness beyond. "Hello," he called hesitantly, but the only response was the low, raspy voice of a person who seemed to be hiding in the shadows. "Leave the food at the door," the voice instructed. Confused, Sheng strained to see who was speaking, but all he could make out was a hand reaching through the small opening, extending a banknote toward him. The hand was pale and bony, sending a chill through him. "Just leave it there," the voice repeated, almost as if it was afraid of being seen. Sheng hesitated, but ultimately decided to do as instructed. He placed the food bag on the ground and stepped back, glancing at the banknote in his hand. It looked normal, yet something felt off. The atmosphere was heavy, with an unshakable feeling of unease. "Thank you," the voice murmured, and before Sheng could respond, the door creaked closed again, leaving him standing in the cold air, bewildered. That night at Kong Cha, as the staff cleaned up after a busy day, Mr. Lee, the owner, was busy calculating the day's earnings. He was a robust man in his 50s with a kind but serious demeanor. He valued his restaurant and always kept a close eye on the finances. As he sorted through the cash, something caught his attention, a strange paper among the real banknotes. "What in the world is this?" Mr. Lee muttered, furrowing his brow as he held up the odd piece of paper. He didn't recognize it and felt a wave of unease wash over him. "Hey, everyone, come here," Mr. Lee called to his staff, gathering them around the counter. "Look at this." The employees clustered around, glancing curiously at the paper. "Is that real money?" one of them asked, tilting their head in confusion. "No, it's fake. Someone switched it," Mr. Lee exclaimed, his voice rising with frustration. "I don't know who did this, but we need to be careful." The staff exchanged nervous glances. "Do you think it was the people from that delivery earlier?" Another employee wondered aloud. "Maybe," Mr. Lee said, shaking his head. "We need to be careful about more fake money. Whoever is doing this is playing a game with us, and I don't like it." He tossed the fake bill into the trash, trying to shake off the feeling of dread creeping in. As the night wore on, the usual laughter and chatter in the restaurant faded, replaced by a heavy sense of unease. The next day, just as the lunch rush began, another order came in from the same address as before. "What do they want this time?" Mr. Lee asked, picking up the phone. "It's the same meal as yesterday," Sheng replied, his curiosity piqued. "Should I deliver it again?" "Yes, but be careful, Sheng," Mr. Lee cautioned. "We need to keep an eye on this." With a mix of nervousness and determination, Sheng grabbed the food and headed to the strange building. The streets were bustling, but anxiety gnawed at him as he approached the address. When he arrived, a chill gripped him. The door looked like it hadn't been opened in years, with rusty hinges and a dusty frame. Taking a deep breath, he rang the doorbell, the sound echoing in the stillness. After what felt like an eternity, the door creaked open, revealing the same pale hand that had appeared before. "Leave the food at the door," the raspy voice commanded. Sheng's heart raced. "Can I at least see who you are?" he asked, desperation creeping in. "No, just leave it," came the curt reply. Frustrated but scared, Sheng placed the food on the ground and stepped back. As he turned to leave, a chill ran down his spine. Something felt deeply wrong, but he couldn't shake his duty to do his job. That night, Mr. Lee gathered his staff, his expression serious. "We received another fake bill today. I don't want any more orders from that address," he declared. "But what if they keep ordering?" Sheng asked. "What if they really need food?" "We can't take that risk, Sheng," Mr. Lee replied firmly. "We have to protect the restaurant." Days passed, and strange events continued. The mysterious customers kept placing orders. Each time, the same eerie routine occurred. Sheng would deliver the food, the hand would reach out through the door, and fake money kept showing up. It felt like they were stuck in a ghostly loop. One evening, Sheng decided he couldn't take it anymore. He wanted to uncover the truth behind these mysterious customers. With newfound bravery, he approached the building one last time, determined to confront whoever was inside. As he stood before the door, he took a deep breath and rang the doorbell with more force than usual. The familiar creak of the door opening sent a rush of adrenaline through him. This time, he wouldn't back down. "Who are you?" he demanded as the door opened. The hand appeared again, but this time Sheng noticed something strange. The skin looked pale, almost like it hadn't seen sunlight in years. "Leave the food," the voice rasped, but Sheng stood firm. "No, I want to know who you are," he insisted, his heart racing. There was a moment of silence, and then the door creaked open wider. Shadows danced in the dim light, revealing a glimpse of an old, dusty room. The air was thick with an eerie chill, and Sheng felt a wave of unease wash over him. "I cannot let you see me," the voice whispered, sounding more like a plea than a command. "Why not?" Sheng pressed, desperation in his voice. "What's going on here?" The hand trembled slightly, and for a moment, Sheng thought he saw a figure shift in the darkness behind the door. "It's not safe," the voice replied. "They'll come for you if you find out." A cold sweat broke out on Sheng's forehead. "Who will come? What are you hiding?" But before he could get an answer, the door slammed shut, leaving Sheng standing in shock. He returned to the restaurant that night, his mind racing with questions. What had he stumbled upon? What was the secret behind that door? As he shared his experience with Mr. Lee and the others, a sense of dread settled over the restaurant. "We can't let this go on," Mr. Lee decided. "We need to report this to the police. Something is definitely wrong." The next day, the police were called. Officers arrived at the restaurant, taking notes and asking questions about the strange orders. Sheng recounted his experiences, feeling both scared and excited. The officers promised to investigate, but when they arrived at the building, they found nothing. It appeared empty and abandoned. Days turned into weeks, and the strange food orders finally stopped. Sheng felt a wave of relief wash over him, but the mystery lingered. What had happened to the people inside? Why had they been paying with fake money? One quiet evening, as the restaurant prepared to close, Sheng found himself alone in the kitchen, cleaning up. The night was peaceful, but suddenly a chill filled the air. He paused and looked around. The silence felt unsettling, and he couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching him. Then the doorbell rang, startling Sheng. He glanced at Mr. Lee, who frowned with concern. "Who could that be?" he asked. Sheng's heart pounded as he walked slowly to the door. When he opened it, a cold wind rushed in, making him shiver. Standing there was a shadowy figure, just like the mysterious customers before. "Leave the food," a raspy voice commanded. Sheng hesitated, memories of those eerie encounters flooding back. "Who are you?" he asked, feeling a surge of defiance. The figure didn't answer. Instead, it extended a pale hand with a banknote. This time, something felt different. When Sheng took the note, a jolt of energy surged through him, and he felt an odd connection to the figure. Suddenly, visions flooded his mind, dark memories of the past, the figure trapped in shadows, longing for freedom. Sheng gasped, overwhelmed by it all. "I can help you," he whispered, realizing the truth. The figure wasn't a villain, but a victim trapped in a cycle of fear. As the figure began to fade, Sheng reached out. "Please, let me help you escape this nightmare." In a soft whisper, the figure replied, "You have already freed me," before disappearing into the night. Sheng stood frozen, the banknote trembling in his hand. He looked back at the restaurant, feeling a newfound purpose. The mystery of the orders had unraveled, revealing a tragic story of longing and escape. From that day on, the restaurant thrived, free from the strange occurrences that had haunted it. Sheng often thought about that chilling experience, grateful for the chance to uncover the truth behind the mysterious orders. He learned that sometimes the scariest things hide the most profound stories, waiting for someone brave enough to listen. News of this unsettling event spread quickly in Hong Kong. Various news outlets reported on the bizarre situation, and soon everyone was talking about it. The case turned into a riddle the police couldn't solve, becoming one of Hong Kong's most notorious unsolved mysteries in decades. People speculated wildly, with some claiming it was a supernatural event. As rumors flew, the police received countless calls from the public, each eager to share thoughts or report clues. Some believed the dead were still in the building, their spirits trapped inside. Others suggested it was a warning from the afterlife. In a desperate attempt to understand, the police called in a feng shui shaman. He walked around the building, consulting his spiritual guides. He believed the spirits couldn't leave because there was no sunlight, making them feel trapped and longing for their old lives. The shaman said the room echoed with sounds of people playing mahjong, reminding everyone of the life that once filled it. He explained that the spirits were restless and sometimes showed themselves to the living. This revelation sent chills down everyone's spine. Were the spirits still lurking in the shadows, watching the living figure out how they had died? Meanwhile, the police worked hard to piece together what had happened before the tragedy. They interviewed friends, family, and anyone who might have known the victims. However, they quickly realized these individuals led very private lives and rarely interacted with others. Weeks passed, and the investigation hit dead ends. The police struggled to find connections or motives. The media frenzy grew, with headlines claiming the case was the most mysterious in Hong Kong's history. People became fascinated by the supernatural, many visiting the site to catch a glimpse of the haunted building. Despite the growing interest, the police stayed focused on their work. They sent teams to search the area for clues. Every lead seemed to fizzle out, leaving them frustrated and exhausted. One evening, as darkness fell over the city, Mr. Lee felt a knot of unease in his stomach. He sat alone in his restaurant, the dim lights flickering, with only the quiet hum of the kitchen for company. His mind raced with questions about the deliveries that had started all this. What had really happened in that building? Why had the money changed before his eyes? Determined to find the truth, Mr. Lee decided to return to the site. He couldn't ignore the feeling that he was somehow connected to the mystery. Gathering his courage, he headed to the building, his heart pounding. When he arrived, moonlight illuminated the entrance, casting eerie shadows. He pushed the door open, and it creaked ominously. The air inside felt heavy and silent. As he stepped further in, memories flooded back: the laughter of mahjong players, the warmth of friendship. But now, all that remained was a haunting emptiness. He approached the mahjong table, where the spirits were said to linger. Closing his eyes, he hoped to feel something. Suddenly, he heard a faint rustle behind him. He spun around, eyes wide with fear. There was no one there, just shadows dancing on the walls. Feeling drawn to the table, Mr. Lee moved closer and noticed a small, torn piece of paper tucked beneath it. Curious, he reached down to grab it. As he unfolded the paper, a chill washed over him. It was a receipt from his restaurant, dated the same day the victims had died. The realization hit him hard. Had he unknowingly served them their last meal? Panic rose within him as he tried to remember that night. Had he seen anything unusual during the delivery? The memories were fuzzy, but he recalled feeling uneasy, as if someone was watching him. He had brushed it off as nerves. Determined to learn more, Mr. Lee hurried back to his restaurant and searched through old delivery records. He needed to uncover every detail about that night. As he looked through the documents, a picture began to form in his mind. He remembered the specific orders and names on the receipts, but one name stood out: a woman who had ordered food multiple times but had never been seen. Could she be linked to the victims? Had she shared meals with them? The thought sent a chill down his spine. He noted down her details, resolved to find her. The next day, Mr. Lee began his search. He walked around the neighborhood, asking locals about the mysterious woman. Many shook their heads, saying they had never seen her. Just as he was about to give up, he spotted an elderly man sitting on a park bench. "Excuse me, sir," Mr. Lee said. "Do you know anything about a woman who lived near the old mahjong house?" The man squinted, deep in thought. "Ah, yes. She was a recluse, lived alone, and rarely came out. Some say she was a ghost herself." He chuckled, but there was seriousness in his eyes. Nobody knew much about her, but she played mahjong with the folks in that house. Rumor has it she was involved in something dark. Mr. Lee's heart raced. This was the lead he had been searching for. "Do you know where she is now?" The man shook his head. "No one has seen her in ages, but if you're looking for answers, check the old library. She used to visit there often, poring over books on the occult." With renewed determination, Mr. Lee rushed to the library. The building was dim and dusty, filled with the scent of old pages. He approached the librarian, a kind elderly woman, and explained his situation. "Ah, the woman you speak of," she said softly. Her name was May. She was obsessed with the supernatural and often read about spirits and hauntings. "I haven't seen her in years, but she left behind a collection of strange writings." Intrigued, Mr. Lee asked to see the writings. The librarian led him to a back room filled with boxes of old books and papers. As he sifted through them, he found notes and sketches about rituals and the spirit world. One note caught his eye. It spoke of a ritual that could trap spirits in a place forever. Could May have performed this ritual? Mr. Lee's heart raced. If so, could the spirits of the mahjong players still be trapped in that room, unable to move on? He needed to confront May to learn the truth. Days passed, but Mr. Lee couldn't find her. He decided to return to the mahjong room one last time. As he stepped inside, he felt a strange energy surround him. The air felt alive, and he could almost hear distant echoes of laughter. He took a deep breath and called out, "If anyone is here, I seek the truth." His voice echoed in the silence, and for a moment, he thought he heard a whisper in response. Suddenly, the mahjong table rattled, and shadows swirled around him. Heart racing, he stood his ground. "Show yourself," he demanded, desperation creeping into his voice. A figure appeared in the corner of the room, hazy and ghostly. It was a woman, her features blurry, but her presence strong. "You seek answers," she said, her voice echoing like a memory. "But some truths are better left undiscovered." "Who are you?" Mr. Lee asked, feeling both terrified and curious. "I am May," the figure replied, her eyes glistening with sadness. "I was drawn to the game, to the warmth of friendship, but I brought darkness with me, binding their souls to this place." Mr. Lee's heart sank. "But why? Why did you do this?" "I wanted to escape my loneliness," May confessed. "I thought if I could keep them near, I would never be alone again, but I was wrong." The shadows in the room darkened, and the air grew colder. "They cannot move on," May said, tears filling her ghostly eyes. "And I cannot either. I am trapped in my own guilt." Understanding flooded through Mr. Lee. "How can we free them?" "Only by accepting what has happened," May whispered. "Let them go. Only then can I find peace." With a heavy heart, Mr. Lee nodded. "I will help you, I promise." As he spoke, the shadows began to lift, and the room brightened. The spirits of the mahjong players appeared around him, their faces calm but sorrowful. They looked at May with a mixture of love and loss. "Your time here is over," Mr. Lee said firmly, determination coursing through him. "You must let them go, May. You can find peace now." May nodded, her spirit brightening. "Thank you. I will find my way." With that, a warm light enveloped the room. and the spirits slowly began to fade. The last thing Mr. Lee saw was May smiling, free from her chains. He felt a wave of relief wash over him as the room filled with warmth and light. When the light faded, the mahjong table was empty, and the room was silent. The air felt lighter, as if a great weight had been lifted. Mr. Lee stood there, overwhelmed by the experience. He left the building that night, feeling a sense of closure. The mystery of the strange orders and the spirits had been solved, but he knew the memories would stay with him forever.